Welcome to the Counselling Armchair, Nurturing Wellbeing and Study, hosted by Counselling and Psychological Services at RMIT University. The Counselling Armchair is recorded on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations as the traditional owners of the land. This podcast aims to help you manage your university life so you can be at your best. We'll be sharing with you tips on student life here and ways to enhance your mental well-being.
Welcome back to the Counselling Armchair, Nurturing Your Wellbeing and Study. Today we decided that as it's the start of the year and a new semester full of potential and good intentions, we wanted to chat about positive psychology. Psychology tends to be very problem-focused, and given all the challenges and uncertainty in the world right now, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the problems in our lives and around us. Positive psychology offers a different perspective, and I'm excited to talk to Liz about how we can apply principles of positive psych to improve our well-being. So Liz, thank you so much for being our interviewee today and for sharing your knowledge with us.
My pleasure. Oh, I'm not used to being in this seat. I'm usually the one asking the questions, right?
You are. And feel free to just add questions in if you'd like. But maybe let's start with what is positive psychology and how does it differ from the more traditional psychological approaches on the one hand and positive thinking on the other?
Yes, that's a really good question. I think the main thing to keep in mind with positive psychology is that it really is the study of strengths. So it's kind of it's sort of flipping the script a little bit. It's the study of wellness, and when we're travelling well in life, when we've got good well-being, what are the factors that influence that? So it's sort of, reversing. Traditional psychology tends to be more deficit-based, when things go wrong, perhaps diagnosable disorders. A lot of our language is very deficit-based, and it is important to understand that stuff as well, of course, to understand how to help people have better lives and get symptom relief and all of that sort of stuff. But I think positive psychology just offers another perspective on, what is it that people who report being happy and having high well-being are doing?
So what's working and what can we do more of?
Yeah, so what can we do more of to sort of add into the mix? Positive thinking, on the other hand, is, something that's come through, I suppose, the more of that new agey sort of pathway. You've got your gurus out there, like people like Anthony Robbins that, have written books about think yourself thin or think yourself rich, kind of, where it's this idea of, if I just make 1,000 affirmations saying I am rich, that I will become rich, and
all the manifesting
and yeah, that's right. So, and I'm not sort of saying that's good or bad, but that isn't what positive psychology is. It's really the study of wellness.
Yeah, great. And so, what is happiness from a positive psychology perspective? How do they look at it?
That's the $1 million question, isn't it? What is happiness? We all want to be happy. I think from a positive psychology perspective, happiness is seen as a variable state that's very individual. So there isn't like a singular definition of happiness, like if we have these factors present, you can call yourself happy. It's very much defined by you, and how happy you should be is also determined by you. So no hard and fast rule about I must be this happy to be successful in life and what that looks like. It's really something that you kind of work out within yourself. So that's because really states of happiness vary from person to person. And the study of happiness has really shown us that as individuals, there is a bit of variance in what we call like the happiness set point. Right. So that's kind of like naturally where we sit with how happy we feel in life. Some of us have an abundantly high happiness set point where what's normal for us is to feel very positive and effervescent and, bubbling with joy. And others of us maybe have a set point that's a little bit lower, and happiness might look a little bit different. In that situation, it might be more around contentment, engagement with life, feeling like you're doing something worthwhile and meaningful for you, but not necessarily having those overabundant positive feelings all the time. So it looks different. it also is going to change from time to time, right? Nobody is going to be happy all the time. If bad things happen, stressful things happen, of course, our state of happiness is going to reflect that and it's going to go down. And then when good things happen, of course, it's likely to go up. So very hard to pin down happiness. I think we have maybe a bit more of a one-dimensional view of happiness as a society. You know, we tend to see it as like
a goal.
Yeah, it's a goal, and when you get there, like you've made it in life, and when
you stay
in
there,
and you stay there, and when you're feeling happy, you are just blissful all the time, and you know, you look like one of those glorious ads in a magazine where everything's shiny and wonderful, and I think in reality happiness looks a little bit different to that, and having it be a bit more of a realistic aim of what we're sort of trying to achieve is going to make it more achievable as well. You know, it's not going to feel so impossible for us, particularly if we are suffering or struggling or dealing with difficulty. That very idealised concept of happiness seems so far away and so unachievable.
Absolutely, which then I imagine then compounds that feeling of potential unhappiness, that there's something wrong with how I'm feeling right now, and maybe it actually is really quite right for the situation or just where you're at.
Absolutely. And, you know, part of being someone with good well-being or someone who's able to achieve happiness is having that self-compassion to be able to sit with that and sit in that and just look after yourself while you go through it, rather than saying I should feel good all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Guess what? You're human. You don't have to.
That's right. Exactly. And look, there's a few models around that sort of encapsulate or define what happiness is. And one that I quite like is called the PERMA model, where each letter of that word, PERMA, stands for a different aspect of happiness. And that was developed by a researcher called Martin Seligman, who has been around in the field of psychology for a very long time. And originally he was researching a concept called learned helplessness, which is this idea that when bad things happen repeatedly, after a while you stop trying because you just expect that the bad outcome is going to happen. And that we refer to that as learned helplessness. And at some point in his career, he thought, wonder what the opposite of that is. Like, you know, learned optimism. And that's what sort of led him into going into this direction of sort of studying positive psychology and the psychology of wellness. So he has a model, the PERMA model, and the letters stand for positive emotion, which of course we would expect to be part of the happiness. That's the, feeling joy, those bubbly feelings. Engagement, so engagement in your life, you know, feeling like you are involved in things. Relationships, so again, positive relationships we know are very good for our mental health. Meaning is also really important. And accomplishment is the A in the model. So you can see it's a really multifaceted concept really, and it's not just, we tend to think of it as just the positive emotion part, not all these other parts.
Yeah, and so is the idea that if we can sort of hit on all of these factors, maybe not perfectly, but in some way, that would really enhance our optimism or our overall happiness and well-being.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So, you know, we don't just have to focus on the positive emotion, but we might go, yeah, you know, I think I need to have a greater sense of purpose or meaning in my life, and that might be the thing that makes the difference for me to feel like I've got better well-being, and that might lead someone to change careers, for example, and retrain in another area or something that's going to be more satisfying for them or give them a greater sense of meaning. And they might not be experiencing any more positive emotion than they were before, but the greater sense of meaning that they have is going to elevate their overall sense of well-being.
That's amazing. So people can really look at these 5 things, look at how do these things show up in my life, what might I be missing, and be able to just kind of assess and maybe review
absolutely
what they might need more of. Great. Yeah. So what does the research on happiness reveal about the secrets to happiness? What contributes the most to happiness? And is it true that money buys happiness? You know, all of these ideas. Tell us a bit about it, Liz.
Yeah. No, isn't that the classic cliche, isn't it? If I was just rich, I'd be happy because I could afford anything that I wanted. Yes. I think the research into what the factors are that lead to people self-reporting being happy around this idea of wealth is really interesting, because what it shows is that yes, to a certain extent, more money is correlated with high levels of well-being and happiness, but only to the extent that you are comfortable in life, like you are not stressed about money, you can pay your bills, you can buy food, put food on the table, keep the roof over your head kind of thing. If you don't have money to do those things, yes, of course, it's going to contribute significantly to your state of well-being. But anything above and beyond that, so like extreme wealth or accumulating more and more wealth, actually does not correlate with increased happiness. So that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Because that's a cliche that we tend to assume is true. That the richer you are, the happier you are. But actually, research doesn't support that.
Yeah, the real problems are still there.
Yeah, exactly. So, the things that contribute most to a sense of happiness are some of which, I mentioned as part of the PERMA model. Having strong relationships in your life. That doesn't necessarily mean a romantic partner, but it might mean, friendships, family relationships. It can mean a partner, of course, but it's just solid relationships where you feel you can rely on people and you are connected. That's very correlated with good well-being. Having a sense of purpose, so that's what we were saying before, having meaning in life. Being healthy, having good health. Obviously, that's correlated with high levels of well-being. It's not something we're always in control of, though.
Yes.
But certainly, again, as you said before, Melissa, if you know that that's an area that's maybe contributing to you not feeling so good about yourself, then that is maybe where you put your energies in, is seeing what you can do to improve your health.
And maybe also, like you said, it may not be something we have control over, but there are other aspects of our well-being that we do have control over. And so maybe that's
true.
A sign we can invest in those other areas.
That is true. Exactly. Yeah. So then, yes, things like personal growth, learning, developing, changing, reading, engaging with the world, all of those things are going to increase your sense of well-being. Positive emotions, that's the obvious one. Obviously, if you're feeling those positive emotions, you're going to report high levels of well-being. And, I mentioned financial security, of course. That's having enough money to meet the necessities in life. Those are all correlated with happiness. So as far as the secrets to happiness, I'm not going to write a self-help book and be a guru.
There's no big secrets here.
There's no big secrets here. It's all really logical stuff that we kind of know in our heart of hearts, I think.
Yeah. And I think it's more about how do we try to get these things, right? That maybe people can veer off in the wrong direction.
Yes.
And ultimately realize, wait a second, this isn't actually making me happy.
Exactly.
So, like you said, it could be financial security, but maybe they go above and beyond that and it becomes going into the rat race and working too hard, for example.
Yeah, it might actually generate more stress because then you feel like you have to keep achieving this level of wealth or earning, and if you don't, then you've failed and you're not a success.
Yeah. So it's about having that balance, it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you mentioned the happiness set point, which I really think is quite interesting. So can you talk a bit more about what that is and what influences our set point?
Yeah, so it's basically the baseline of happiness that people have. And it's where you tend to come back to after there's maybe been significant things in your life that have happened. So like you might go through something really difficult, a loss or something like that, and you're going to, obviously your sense of well-being is going to go right down. But once you recover and you heal and you grieve, you're going to naturally bounce back to that sort of level that is just natural for you. That's kind of what we mean by that. What influences it? Probably about 50% we think is genetic. So not something we can do that much about. It might be our temperament, personality characteristics that have an influence there, and that's kind of inherited. Then about 10% is life circumstances. So that's things that are going on in your life, like how much money you have, like whether you've got good, healthy relationships in your life. They have oftentimes can make us happy at first. Like, I don't know, if we won $1 million in our lotto, I'm sure we would feel absolutely exuberant and delighted and thrilled and bubbling with joy, right? But after a period of time, that initial effect can sort of wear off. So sometimes these life circumstances it's not like a permanent fix.
Yes. And I think that's the trap we fall into, right? Thinking if I just do this, then I will be happy forever.
Exactly.
But it doesn't work that way. So what you're saying is it will wear off, and we need to actually do other things, or perhaps potentially look in other directions for overall well-being.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's about the 10%. That's just, the things that happen around us that probably we don't have a lot of control over. And then the third part of it, which is worth about 40% of the happiness set point, is the intentional activities that we engage in. So this is what you were saying before, Melissa, about what things can we do, where can we direct our energies to kind of improve our sense of well-being.
Right.
So, a person that has just a generally lower happiness set point than another might not ever be able to be that really optimistic, bubbly, exuberant sort of person, but they can still, with this intentional activities, lift their happiness set point, a little bit higher than where it currently sits. So, intentional activities are things that we've learned, again, that people who have good wellbeing tend to practice. And there is some research evidence behind the effectiveness of doing these things. It's things like practicing gratitude. So, it might be something like gratitude journaling, where you reflect at the end of each day on something that you're grateful for. It might be putting time and effort into fostering your relationships. So, maybe doing nice things for the people in your life, or calling them up and saying, hey, let's spend time together, or let's just have a chat, like, haven't spoken to you for a long time. So that's like an intentional activity. Or it might be pursuing a meaningful goal. It might be going, I really believe in human rights. I'm going to go and do some volunteering with disadvantaged people, and that's something that I can do that will make me feel like my life has a really, is meaningful and purposeful. So genetics sort of sets the baseline. Life circumstances obviously toss us around, lift us up and down. But then it's these intentional activities where we can really start to have a bit of influence on our own well-being.
Which I think is incredibly optimistic, and I think it helps quite a lot to know that I actually do have quite a lot of control over my well-being. There's things that I can do. It's not that life just tosses me around and I'm sort of just helpless and have to just react to what's happening. But maybe I can actually do things that make me feel a lot better about where things are at. And I think that's incredibly hopeful.
Absolutely. And I think, it's sort of the caveat that I would put to that is to understand, of course, that nothing is a quick fix in life. You might engage in these intentional activities and go, but I'm still not like the happiest person on earth kind of thing, you know what I mean? It's like, so again, that's where it's important to realise, well, you might not, that's maybe not what you're aiming for. Maybe you're just aiming for, feeling like life is more inherently enjoyable, meaningful, interesting, engaging, whatever it is that's going to be the thing that you want to work on. And that's going to increase your sense of well-being a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's a really, really good distinction to make, that is happiness even the right goal here for many people? And is it more about that idea of meaning, fulfillment, a sense that even though I'm not always happy, my life is worthwhile? Yeah, I think that's beautiful.
Absolutely.
So what role could positive psychology play in improving mental health? And I know you've been talking about that generally, but maybe just in terms of what is the real impact here?
Yeah. Oh, look, I bring it into my work with clients all the time. I would certainly start with understanding, what's wrong, what's not working, what are your struggles. But then at some point I'm going to flip it and I'm going to start validating strengths. I'm going to get the client to be curious about what their strengths are and how we can sort of galvanise those strengths towards some of these intentional activities. So that might be something that I do. There's also a really lovely concept called the 12 Steps to Happiness, which I've borrowed from a great writer called George Burns, not George Burns, the comedian from America, the old man. It's an Australian clinical psychologist called George Burns, and from a book called Standing Without Shoes. And he talks about it. So 12 steps is a concept people might be familiar with. It's used a lot in the area of addiction. So 12-step programs are often based around this idea of, things you can do to contribute towards recovering from addiction. So it's kind of taking that concept but applying it into positive psychology. It's not an addiction thing, of course, but it's just 12 areas that you can think about in your life that you might choose one or more of to work on to contribute to enhancing your well-being whilst you are kind of recovering from or treating depression, for example. So things that are in the 12 steps are being active. So active means not just hard exercise at the gym. It can mean that, of course, but it might also just mean literally doing something rather than nothing. So we know, and we refer to this as behavioural activation in the field of psychology, right? If someone's really depressed, we're wanting them to do more things because we know that when they do more things, they're going to feel better. The more that you are in bed, at home, isolated, withdrawn, the worse you are going to feel. So that's why we encourage this idea of behavioural activation, getting out, seeing people, going to the library, going to the shops, go and get a massage, So that be active concept is really just about doing something rather than doing nothing. It's kind of that behavioural activation idea. And that's how the two kind of like traditional psychology and positive psychology fit so nicely together. So that's one. The other one we've mentioned a few times is relationships. So, working maybe on your connections that you have. It might be getting out more, meeting new people, joining a group, something like that you can say that's my goal for this week. Another one which I really love is practicing kindness. So we know that practicing kindness towards ourselves as well, but towards others, actually has a lovely kickback effect. It makes us feel good about ourselves when we do something nice for somebody else. And so this might be a step that you practice if I'm going to engage in kind of random acts of kindness for people. And I've seen this happen in the community a little bit more recently. My parents, they're elderly, in their 90s now. Actually, my mum just turned 90. Amazing. They're doing so well. I'm so proud of them. But they went to the supermarket one day and the guy that was ahead of them in the queue at the checkout, he hovered while they were getting their groceries checked out. And then when it came time to pay, he just told the checkout person that he was going to pay for their groceries. And he tapped his card and said, "Oh, by the way, I've paid for your groceries."
Amazing.
And my mum just looked at him and went, "But why would you do that?" And he goes, I just wanted to do something nice for someone. She's like, "Oh my God, you are the nicest person in the world. That is so, thank you so much." And she was so grateful and she rang everybody up and said, "You wouldn't believe what this nice young man did." And, it was so meaningful for her. Yeah. And it really put me in mind, it's again a supermarket theme of this time when I was at the supermarket when my son, who's now 19, but when he was a baby and he was very unsettled and he used to want to be in the sling all the time. So I was always carrying him on, strapped to my front. And I was grocery shopping and it's very hard to lift items out of the trolley onto the conveyor belt when you've got a baby strapped to your belly kind of thing.
Yeah,
so I was trying to maneuver and this little old lady, she wasn't old, she was this middle-aged lady came up to me and she was a little Asian lady and she said to me, I do. You have baby, I do. And she just basically loaded all the things from my trolley onto the conveyor belt and she just tapped me on the arm and she said, "You're doing a great job." And I just my eyes filled with tears because I felt seen for a start by this person who didn't even know me. And I felt so cared for by this tiny little gesture. And I've been to the supermarket probably thousands of times in my life. And I certainly don't remember every trip, but that one I remember. And that's because someone was kind to me. And saw me in that moment. So that's the beautiful thing about kindness is that it positively impacts the person that you're doing it to, but then it positively impacts you as well because you feel good about yourself that you've done something nice to somebody else.
Yes.
And the practice of kindness encourages more kindness as well.
I was just thinking that, I can imagine maybe that you will be potentially on the lookout for people who need help. And
literally, in that same week, I went to a medical appointment and I was in the waiting area. I didn't have my child with me at the time. And there was a mother there who was trying to breastfeed her child, and she was trying to keep the shawl that she had covering, for privacy, kind of modesty sort of thing. Yeah. And it was slipping, and she was trying to get the baby on the breast and trying to keep herself covered up. And I just went over to her and I said, oh, do you want me to hold it for you? And I just held it up for her so she could use both her hands to kind of get the baby on, and then she could put the wrap over herself and the baby and it was just a small thing, but I thought, oh God, I've been there. I remember that, many times when I've struggled with
six
that.
Hands,
You need 6 hands, and here I am. And it turned out that, and I can't remember how we worked out this connection, but it turned out that she knew my husband. And I think she went back to work that day and said, I was just at this clinic, blah, blah, blah. And this lovely woman came over and helped me out with the blah, blah, blah. And we put two and two together that she was talking about me. And there was that.
Whoa.
Yes, I know. So I got to hear that how she'd received that act of kindness, which gave me a second kind of boost, because in the moment when I was doing that nice thing for her, I just thought I did feel good about myself. I thought, this is a nice thing to do. Yeah. And then when I got that feedback, then that was another, sort of positive feeling that it gave me.
That's so beautiful. And I can see how it sort of raises that sense of yourself and what kind of person you are. But then also really touches on some of those things you were talking about in PERMA, which is around maybe that relationship, like we're connecting with somebody by seeing something that they might need and then being able to, help them with that. And then also that sense of meaning, like I've done something meaningful in the world today.
Exactly. So that's a lovely step to practice. And one other one which I might mention, because I think it's, again, something that fits very nicely with traditional psychology as well, is the practice of mindfulness, which is, being in the present moment and engaging with the world through your 5 senses. And so it might mean going out and literally smelling the roses, like noticing, the sun on my skin feels so nice right now, it's so warm, this is a lovely feeling, or those flowers smell gorgeous, or that sound that I'm hearing, the bird song or something, that's really lovely. I was walking into campus today. I'm at the Bundoora campus, and there's a lot of lemon scented gums on this campus, gum trees, and so the branches break off sometimes when there's been a lot of wind, and you sort of see them littered on the ground, but they release this beautiful eucalyptus lemon scent in the air. And I was just walking along going, that is so I love that smell. Like, it's just such a beautiful, iconically Australian smell, Yeah. And I was just really appreciating it in that moment. So that's an action that can really contribute to well-being.
Yeah,
doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, because you don't need anything special. You don't need to be doing anything, put effort into anything. It's literally what is kind of good about now, almost.
Yeah.
Even if it's like I'm sitting on the couch and it's incredibly comfortable and I'm under a warm blanket.
Yes. And I love this feeling. I feel so cozy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not everything is terrible.
That's right. Because we tend to take those things for granted a little bit, because we get very focused on, the bigger problems in life, that we just don't notice those small details as much. But actually paying attention to them really reorients our thinking. It balances it out a little bit to being very skewed in the negative direction. Everything's hard, to saying, but wait, I had these really beautiful moments, and, a moment of connection with someone, or a really tasty food that was being cooked that smelt amazing, or I feel so cozy here on the couch, or, oh gosh, I love this movie that I'm watching, or something, those little moments that just balance it out a little bit, so that you go, there actually are good things in life.
That's right. I don't need $1 million to feel good about it.
Exactly. I often say that I think it's just human nature to have a negative bias anyway. We're just built that way, that we tend to pay more attention to when things go wrong than when things go right. That is just how we're built, and it's a survival thing if you think about it. But I think so much kind of reinforces that in life, which is, for example, the news, that we all watch to keep up with events in the world. I've often argued that it shouldn't be called the news. It should be called the bad news, because that's what is reported. Things that go wrong, terrible things that happen. And if you immerse yourself in that stuff all the time, it reinforces that negative bias that we already have, and you can start to see the world as a terrible place full of terrible people. And of course, you're not going to feel a good sense of well-being about life if you believe that.
Exactly.
And, and you miss all those things that I've just shared about the kindness that people practice with each other every single day. It's all around you, I promise. You just have to look for it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's almost like, how do we widen our view and our scope, just to not get so tunnel visioned on those negatives or those problems.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to do, and like you said, so understandable given how we are wired as humans.
Yes, exactly.
But just be able to step back a bit, maybe use a bit of mindfulness, kind of go, what's actually happening right now? Maybe things are okay.
Yeah.
And, it makes me think of that Mr. Rogers quote, the Mr. Rogers neighborhood, is that it? But it was like, when things are really difficult, it's like, look for the helpers.
Yeah.
When things are kind of going wrong, look for the helpers. And I remember that during COVID times as well. It was like,
so true.
So many people out there doing amazing things for each other in the community. There's always people trying to help. And
there are, and I also think that's inherently a part of human nature, is people like willing to help each other and working together and community.
Yeah.
I'm doing a show at the moment, so I don't know if I've mentioned this to our audience, but I do musical theatre as my hobby, and I'm in Come From Away. So if people don't know that show, it's about when 9/11 happened and the planes were diverted to, because American airspace closed, they were diverted to a town called Gander in Newfoundland in Canada. And I think 38 planes landed in that area, and all of a sudden this tiny little town of 9,000 people had 7,000 people that arrived on these planes that didn't know what was going on, that, were feeling bewildered and stressed and, and needed to be housed and fed and cared for. And the whole town rallied and went into action to help these people. And it's such a remarkable story about the power of human kindness and care for one another, that they forged relationships with each other that have lasted to the present day. And it was like, that's like 20-something years ago, 9/11 in 2001. Yeah. And that's what makes it such a remarkable story, that, people just connected in this really beautiful way at the time of, the darkest of humanity kind of thing. And so that's the counterbalance to the darkness, and it's important to remember that that's there as well.
Such a good point. Yeah. And I love that example. I think that's a really beautiful one. Yeah. So thank you. Were there any other of the 12 steps that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah. Do you know, the one that I will mention that I think is really a good one is to work on your optimism. So that's something that I think is something that that's an intervention that I would use with people a lot. We just know that pessimism is linked to low well-being. Yeah. If you think bad things are going to happen, then you not only spend time dreading and waiting for the bad things to happen, and then when bad things happen, you feel really upset and sad. So you double your distress, because you've got all the build-up upset and then the upset when bad things happen. Yeah. So it's just not a formula for well-being.
Yeah, well, people actually think it's going to be the opposite, right? That's
they do think that. They do.
This will actually prepare me. I won't feel as bad. I won't be as disappointed if I expect the worst.
That's right.
But you're saying it actually doesn't do that.
It doesn't do that. It doesn't do that. It's absolutely not true.
Yeah.
So, fostering optimism, that's a really powerful one. It is hard to do when you've kind of got a bit of a neural pathway laid down around being pessimistic, and, some people just naturally think that way, and it's hard for them to not see the worst in every situation. But just sort of keeping an eye out for, or trying to flip the script a little bit, like, what's the silver lining to this situation? Is there any good that has come out of this? It might be a learning that you've made or something like that. It might be just questioning, rather than what could go wrong, questioning what could go right, and just adding that to your thought process.
Yeah.
I'm not saying get rid of the pessimistic thought, because you probably won't.
You
can't. It's all about balance. It's about balancing it with something else, and then it's not as the negative power of it isn't as strong when it's balanced with a bit of positive stuff.
Yeah.
So that's one that I would also say is work on your optimism of just flipping the script. What's another way I can look at this? Is there any good that could have come out of this? You know, what have I maybe learned out of this situation? That can be a powerful one to work on, and that's in the 12 steps as well.
Yeah.
The last one I might just mention, so I haven't mentioned all of them, but the last one is about behaving in a happy manner. So another thing that we as psychologists often tell people to do, it's usually in reference to confidence, right, is fake it till you make it, right? So you act as though you are confident, and eventually, like, we know that when you repeat that behaviour and those confident actions, that you often become confident in the process, right? Even though you might not feel it in the beginning. So same with happiness. You know, it's like, have a look around you. Who's the happiest person that you know? How do they act? What do they do? Can you emulate some of that, even if you're not feeling it in the moment? That could be a step that you practice.
So it could be something like, you know, they show a lot of interest in these conversations, or they smile a lot. Or
that's right.
Like, what else? What other things do you think, you know, people have said, or what have people said in those examples?
Yeah, of how happy people act.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is around how they engage with others, you know. So it might be, you know, warmth, kindness, care, interest, as you mentioned, in others. It might be doing things that they love, you know, pursuing hobbies that they have.
Yeah.
Feeling really enthusiastic about that, like finding their passion. That might be something that they do. So it could be a whole range of things, you know, that they're doing in terms of how they act. One interesting one that people have looked into, and I don't know if any of our listeners have heard of these, but some people do laughter circles. So basically they get together and they stand in a circle and they literally just fake generate laughing, right?
Wow.
And it's really interesting. Not that I'm saying people should go and do that. It's kind of wacky, but like I kind of like it as well. I kind of like it. Just this big group of people in a park just like giggling away. Laughter is incredibly contagious.
It is.
And so when you engage in laughter, what you find is after a while, you're not just making yourself laugh, you're actually laughing at the laughing. And the actual benefits on your system, on your body system, on your nervous system are really powerful. So it might have started out as I really have nothing to laugh at here, but I'm making myself laugh. By the end of it, you are really laughing at the laughing and at how absurd what you're doing is. And then you're getting this kind of positive effect on your nervous system from the laughter, because the laughter has a really positive health benefit.
I think that's fantastic, because you're right. It's like the body still feels it, still experiences it.
Exactly.
You know, and then we can still get some pleasure from it. And I think, that's really beautiful. It's sort of like it's almost as well realizing like I'm still capable of it, especially if you're feeling quite down for a long time or flat. You are actually capable of still feeling those things. Yeah, brilliant. And so you mentioned gratitude journaling, and also those acts of kindness, which is so beautiful. And I'm just wondering, what other kind of, positive psychology practices can people try?
Yeah, no, great question. Yeah, so I'll say a little bit more about gratitude to start with, because I think that's probably one of the most powerful things that you can practice. And so it's really simple, and there's apps around as well that you can download, like gratitude journal apps where you can record it on your phone, so it's really, really easy. If you don't want to write things down or record it in an app, you can just do it as a mental exercise as well, just in your head. Whatever the lowest effort option is for you. But it's at the end of the day, basically think about three things. It's often three things that we suggest, and I don't know whether 3 is a magic number for some reason. If 3 is too hard, 1 is fine as well. But 3 things that you feel grateful for. Now, the tip I always give people is don't think of broad concepts like I'm grateful for my parents. Of course you are. I mean, that's one of my ones. I'm grateful for my parents. But if I just said that every day, it would start to become meaningless. So keep it small and specific. So it might be the other day my mum and dad cooked me a meal that I used to have growing up a lot, and I ate it for lunch, and I was just savouring the taste of and just the memories associated with this dish. That would be the thing that I would put down. You know, mum and dad made me gnocchi, and that I'd be grateful for that. Very specific, small thing. So not big, broad concepts, small and specific with your gratitude, so that you have different ones every day. So just reflect on the day. Something that made me smile, something that made me curious, something that made me interested, you know, that sparked my interest, something that made me feel good, something I paid attention to. And it can literally be as small as I went outside and the sun felt so nice on my face.
Yes, or like a moment of connection with somebody that day.
That's right, exactly, where we just had a genuine laugh together, or we talked about something really interesting. Yeah, so small and simple with the gratitude journaling, and there's really good evidence to suggest if you engage in that every day that it is going to improve your well-being. So so that's a good one. So gratitude journaling. Another one is to identify your strengths. So I mentioned or alluded to strengths before. There's actually a tool that you can use. It's called the Signature Strengths Survey. And you can find that if people just Google VIA Signature Strengths Survey. I'll put it in the show notes as well, so you can get to it from there. But if you just Google VIA Signature Strengths Survey, you'll get to the website where this survey is hosted. You usually have to register your email just to sign up. It's mainly because they send you a report, so they need to be able to send it somewhere. And you do a survey of 200 or so questions. It's quite long. But what it does is it ranks, there's 24 signature strengths, and it ranks them from your top strength to your bottom strength. Now, people that have more of a negative way of thinking about the world, which is AKA all of us, we're immediately going to go, oh no, what are my bottom strengths? Right?
What am I not good at?
What am I not good at? And my word of caution is don't do that, because everyone has to have something on the bottom. Like, we can't have all 24 strengths equally.
Exactly.
There'd be no human on earth that has all 24 strengths equally, and they are ranked. So don't pay attention to the bottom ones, pay attention to the top ones, your top 5, your top 10 strengths, and have a think about how they show up in your life. Have a think about whether you can utilise them more. So one of the strengths is an appreciation of love and beauty.
Right.
And, you know, if you have that one, you might be like, you know what, I need to go to more art galleries and look at beautiful art. I need to go places where I can see beautiful nature, because that's something when I'm out in nature and I see something so breathtakingly beautiful, it moves me so much, and I have so much positive emotion associated with it, that it's such a good thing for my well-being to do more of that.
Yeah, right. And so it sounds like these strengths are also maybe related to your sense of meaning as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I've done the survey several times. Every time I do it, I have slightly different strengths. So it obviously, and this is what we were saying before, like, none of us are static. We're always in, you know, movement and change. But one of the ones that often shows up for me is, and I can't remember the specific name of the goal, but it's around perspective taking. I think it's called wisdom. Maybe wisdom is the name of the strength. And when it came up for me, I was like, oh, yes, because I've always prided myself on being able to put myself in somebody else's shoes. Like, I know I have that ability to do that. That's why I can be a good psychologist. It's why I can be a good actor, actually, as well, because you have to embody a character and kind of understand how they're thinking and what they're feeling. So it's like, that can be affirming as well, just to realise that, oh, yeah, that makes sense for me. Like, and I use it. I use it in my job. I use it in my hobby, you know, so I am using it. I'm making use of that strength. And that can just be affirming. Or if you think I'm not making use of that strength, then maybe I can do things that will allow me to make more use of it.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
Did you have any others up your sleeve, other practices?
Yes. So another one that I'll talk to you about is called savouring. And savouring is really about present moment enjoyment of pleasurable things. So it's not just present moment, actually. It's also past recollection and future anticipation, not just in the present moment. So it's actually made up of those 3 parts.
Okay.
So let's say you've got something coming up. For example, I'm about to go on a trip. So I might be thinking about this trip, and part of savouring this experience is me thinking about what it's going to be like, what am I going to do there, what will it feel like, and I engage and I give myself space to just daydream and reflect and think about what this experience is going to be like. That's part one of savouring. When I'm on the trip, savouring is that present moment, like really noticing what I'm doing, how amazing this is that I'm here in this place and seeing these things that I've only ever seen in a picture or on television before, and I'm seeing it in person, and I'm really in the present moment paying attention to that, how special that is.
Like soaking up the experience.
Soaking up the experience in the moment. And then the final part of it is the reflecting on it. So afterwards, going back, remembering, I remember when I went there and I saw that. I remember that. Oh, that was so good. And, you know, so it might be that, you know, you've got things that remind you of that, a picture, an object or an item or something that, you know, like a necklace that you wear that, you know, when you touch it, it's going to remind you of that moment. That's all part of savouring as well. So that's a really good practice to get into, savouring.
Yes.
We talked about meaning and values, so there's probably heaps of things you can find online, like a values exercise to find out what your values are. And values are kind of like, I guess, rules for life in a way. They're things that you always strive towards. Like one value might be wanting to be a good parent, or, you know, wanting to be organised, or wanting to be punctual or something like that. Like these might be values. Yeah. And then you have goals that will help you, you know, in the service of those values. But a value is never finished. It's something you always strive towards. So it might be good to know, what are mine? You know, what are the ones that matter most to me? And it's not like there's good ones and bad ones. It's just like, what are mine?
Yeah, I love that. And I know I've heard it described as like a compass. Like it's like
beautiful.
The direction that we head into.
That's right.
Not the goal. And so it always provides that guide around, what would be meaningful for us, what would be fulfilling, what feels right.
Yeah, totally. So that's a good one. And then there's flow. So I don't know if people have heard of the concept of flow, but the concept of flow is really about being engaged in what you're doing so much that the passage of time escapes you. So if our listeners can ever recall a time when they were doing something and they were so absorbed in what they were doing that when they looked up and they went, oh my God, 2 hours have passed and it feels like 5 minutes because I was so engaged in what I was doing. That's flow. We call that flow. Flow is great for well-being. The more flow experiences you can have, the more likely that you are going to experience that positive well-being. And you're likely to achieve flow when you're doing something that's really interesting and meaningful for you. So that's where it is like finding your passion, indulging in your hobbies, doing those things that are going to allow you to be so absorbed in what you're doing that time will just pass and you'll look up and go, wow, 3 hours have just gone. I've been so into doing this. That's going to really contribute to your well-being. And then the last thing that I'll just add is maybe just journaling positive experiences. Oftentimes when we journal what went wrong, what we're upset about, and that's fine. I'm not saying to not do that, but I'm just saying on top of that, to add balance, allow some reflection for what's gone right. You know, what was one good thing that happened today? Not, you know, that's sort of similar to the gratitude journaling concept, but it's maybe more about something that happened that was good or positive. Something I learned, something new I learned, that kind of thing, and reflecting on that. So those would be some practices that I would utilise from the field of positive psychology.
Yeah, no, that's great. There's so many things there that people can really just quickly take away and try. Like none of those require anything special to do. So I love that. Yeah. And so can you tell me maybe about the concept of post-traumatic growth? And so what is that and how can we achieve that? Because we often hear about post-traumatic stress. So what is growth here?
Yeah, absolutely. I love this concept, and I think that it's an important part of healing is to find what the post-traumatic growth was. And it really is that concept of, you know, what's the silver lining to this situation, which can feel a bit yuck, I guess, when something really awful has happened to you. Like, of course, there's nothing good about what happened to you. It was really awful.
Yes.
But it might be that you've changed in a way, or you've realised something about yourself, or it changed your life direction in such a way that it's created more meaning in your life going forward, or a greater sense of confidence in yourself or belief in yourself. And that's what post-traumatic growth is. So
it's not so much something that maybe if you're still in that stressful period.
That's right.
That's potentially not something you're going to be able to notice about yourself or perceive. It could happen much later on.
I think it's more of a reflective practice for after, that the trauma has passed and you're in that recovery phase, definitely. Because I agree. I think when you're in it, you can't think of anything good about this thing that's happening to me right now.
No.
Some really good examples of post-traumatic growth might be someone like Rose Batty, who is an Australian woman whose son was murdered by her ex-partner, her violent ex-partner. And it really did seem to be an act of revenge against her, and he killed himself and their son. He was her only child. And it was just like, I think my child was a similar age at that time when that happened, and I just remember hearing that news and just being absolutely gutted for this woman and thinking, how on earth would you ever recover from something as horrific as that?
Yeah.
And what she's done through her healing process is to really raise awareness around violence against women mostly, but domestic violence issues, and how much we don't talk about it and need to talk about it. And so really like lifting the veil on it to increase the awareness to protect other people and families in the future from an outcome like this. And I think she even got like an Order of Australia or something, or she's been recognised for her work in this area.
Was she Australian of the Year a few years ago?
Australian of the Year.
Yeah. And she's incredible.
She's incredible. And so that's an example of someone who's achieved post-traumatic growth. Like, of course, if she could go back and not have that happen, that's what she would choose. It's never saying, I'm glad that happened because, this thing has now happened. Of course, you're never going to think about it in that way. But if you can kind of go, this was the catalyst for me doing something meaningful that's going to help others, and therefore my child's death isn't in vain.
That's right.
Is kind of what the transformation that she went through that process. And that's a concept in positive psychology as well. So I think, I do like to reflect on that with people that are talking about a past traumatic event that occurred. Absolutely right that the timing has to be right. I wouldn't be introducing this like right when you're in the middle of it. So it's things like having a growth mindset, maybe finding meaning and purpose in adversity. Maybe it's that you found some social connections that didn't exist before because of what you went through. Yeah, so it's all of those things. It's that sort of in that space of sort of like resilience and growth.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really important one, because I think there is so much focus on trauma and all that at the moment. Everyone talks about their trauma, but maybe it's not so much just about that. There's actually so much that can also arise out of that as well.
Absolutely. And it's always a concept of and, not or, and that's what I sort of want to always point out to people, because it's easy to think, positive psychology is just going like, everything's fine, it's all great, like, and just being in denial about bad things in the world. And it's not that at all. It's about recognising the bad things in the world and also recognising the good things in the world. So it's an and, not an or.
Yeah, no, I really like that distinction. Thanks, Liz. Maybe the last thing I'd like to touch on, and this is a little bit of a sidestep, but you talked a little bit about positive emotions, and so can you talk about the benefits of fun? Because I think we're often very work-driven, study-driven, achievement-driven, all of that.
Yeah.
Why is that important for us?
Oh, yes, I love this. I went to see George Burns, the person that I was talking about before that came up with the 12 Steps to Happiness concept. I went to see him speak, and he said the first thing that he always asks his clients as part of his therapy assessment is, what do you do for fun? And I went, oh my God, I knew I was going to love that man immediately. I was like, this guy is awesome, because how often do we think, like, we just see fun as being this frivolous thing you do if you have time. But in him kind of putting it front and centre, he's recognising that it actually is incredibly important, and we really should prioritise it much more than we do.
Yeah.
It's essential for our well-being. It obviously is an opportunity to feel those positive emotions that are part of happiness. but it allows us to kind of engage in things that are creative, interesting. You know, we're more likely to get things like flow happening. We're, more likely to feel passionate or feel like there's a sense of meaning when we're having fun.
Yeah.
And it's playful. It's just like, you know, when you think about being a kid and that's what we did. We just did fun things, right? And we laughed and we were silly and, you know, we didn't sort of put all these things upon ourselves about needing to be mature and responsible and all of that sort of stuff. We just like there's a freedom in fun.
Yes, I was just thinking then it's about taking the pressure off.
Exactly.
There's just no pressure involved in fun because you're not, I mean, once there's pressure, you're not really having fun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I often say to my clients, if I could prescribe, and I can't because I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm a psychologist, but if I could prescribe, I would write on the prescription pad, I prescribe a dose of fun. So, you know, I just like let loose a little bit, you know, do things that are just purely for pleasure and enjoyment. There's no other purpose for it except to enjoy yourself.
Yes. And so, I really, that resonates with me, that idea of like if we had a prescription pad, because people don't give themselves permission.
They don't.
And so it's about how can you give yourself permission? Know that you deserve it. And it is actually so important to you as a person. It's not a waste of time.
Not a waste of time.
It's productive in its own way.
It is because of its overall benefits to your well-being. And if you have good well-being, you're going to be more productive. You're going to achieve more. You know, you actually are going to get more stuff done, ultimately, if you allow yourself to have those moments of fun and that release from the pressure. You'll manage your stress better. You'll have balance in all things better. So don't see it as a frivolous thing that you do if you've got time, because you'll never have time. There'll always be other things that kind of get in the way. Actually, make it a priority. Make time. Make time. So at least once a week, I'm going to do something that's pure fun.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Liz has prescribed fun for everybody. You're allowed to have it.
You're allowed to have fun. I've said so.
Well, thank you so much, Liz. It has been a joy to chat to you about this today. I really love that we went in this direction and were able to just bring a little bit more lightness and fun into people's days today, I hope. And, you know, go away, practice these things and, you know, just see how they go. There's no right or wrong. Just give it a go.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Melissa.
Well, thank you. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Counselling Armchair, Nurturing Your Wellbeing and Study. If you found this episode helpful, please consider sharing it with someone who might benefit. And don't forget to subscribe for more conversations about nurturing your mental health and fostering meaningful connections. Until next time, take care and be kind to yourself. And remember, you're not alone in this journey.
Thanks for joining us today on the Counselling Armchair, Nurturing Wellbeing and Study. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and learned a useful thing or two. Have a great week. And just remember that life can be amazing. See you next time.
Isn't life so amazing? Sometimes it can get crazy, but hey, that's okay. We've got another day to make mistakes and say sorry. There's no sense in our worry, 'cause all we can do is try our best to make it through with love.